think it is just about time to get started. So we'll go ahead and get started for everybody. I am Erica Bashirs-Perel, and I am the director for the Center for Innovation and Sustainability in Local Media here at the UNC Journalism School. We're here today for a webinar and discussion of the UNC-Knight Foundation Table Stakes program. We're about to kick off our 5th cohort in that program, and we wanted to provide some basic background information and a little bit of information for people who might be considering applying for our 5th cohort. With me today is Sarah Vicello, the program coordinator for CISLM that I work with every day. She is our kind of behind the scenes mastermind. She makes a lot of the things at our center run, and she'll be working on manning the chat and the questions and other things like that today. Sarah, do you want to say hi?
Hello.
All right. And then also with us today is Charlie Baum. He's our program director and has been involved in the table stakes program, both at UNC and more broadly since it was started. And he's here to give some background and more information about the program. Charlie, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone.
All right. So why don't we go to the next slide? All right, so again, welcome. Thank you so much. Here's a little bit, we're gonna get started with a little bit of background about the program, and Charlie is gonna kind of give the full perspective of how the program came to be, how the UNC program fits in with the kind of broader table stakes journalism universe. So I'll let Charlie take it away.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Erica and Sarah. So table stakes really comes out of the Salzburger program at Columbia Journalism School, now the Media Transformation Challenge program at Poynter. It began in 2007 with a grant from the Salzburger family intending to build the general management capacity of the industry, an industry that was characterized by church and state and very few people taking overall responsibility for the success of the enterprise. That program has really pioneered an awful lot. It has over 300 alumni, and we'll describe what that means for you in just a bit. In 2015, Jennifer Preston, then of the Knight Foundation and a former fellow in the program, wanted to do something for local journalism in major metropolitan newspapers. And the feeling was that an awful lot was known. The issue was just getting it done and documenting what needed to happen. And out of that was launched the Major Metro Table Stakes program. And the brave participants that year were Minneapolis, Dallas, Philadelphia, and Miami, the major papers there. And they basically laid out, what do we need to have in place? What are the table stakes to be able to exist in this digital world? And that they were very successful in that, and out of that came a book about the table stakes necessary, again, to be viable in the environment folks are facing. That program is now in its 5th year. There have been a ton of major metro organizations that have gone through it. Seattle, Milwaukee, Houston, Sacramento, Pittsburgh, Omaha, Charlotte, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been very rich. Given the success of that program, other programs were established as well. The UNC program, and the UNC program's kind of hallmark has been its geographical nature, that what happens if you can concentrate in a geographic area people and organizations who are familiar with the basic tools and concepts of table stakes. And this program has thrived. We are now entering our 5th year. There are also other programs at Arizona State for local TV. Gannett McClatchy had their own internal efforts for 16 enterprises, and then the Poynter program, which is a little bit more condensed version. So UNC, one of my favorite programs of all time. It's in my personal Hall of Fame. I think the geographic focus builds a collaborative spirit and a closeness that is not as prevalent other places. This program has a mix of organization types, not just newspapers, but radio stations, nonprofits, startups, et cetera. I think it's warmer and more personal, and that is a quality of UNC and the folks like Erica and Sarah who've been involved with this. And I think it's freer and more innovative, and we're able to adapt pretty quickly to kind of changing dynamics over the years. Just a quick word on what we mean by table stakes and the particular nature of this program. Table stakes comes from poker. It means what are the minimum requirements just to credibly be in the game? That if you don't have these in place, you're not going to succeed. Differentiators are the advantages by which you might compete and grow and differentiate yourself. This is the table stakes program. There is a book. We could just give you the book, but giving people books is like giving them a New Year's resolution. You can read the book and find it interesting, and but hard to do. So the programs really offer, we think, pretty much the world's best way of getting something done. Instead of talking at you, lecturing, giving you thousands of pages and reading and hoping that you'll do something back home, we ask you to commit to a real performance challenge. And by that, we mean more audience, deeper engagement, more revenue, more diversified revenue, more impact with important communities that you want to build relationships with. Not plans, not training, but actual outcomes. And the program exists through the curriculum we offer, the peer group, the alumni network. And that's why the genealogy of this program is so important, because you become part of that network in order to be successful. So that, in essence, is the program. The in-person version comes with fried chicken. The online, you got to bring your own. But with that, I'll hand it back to Erica. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Let's go to the next slide. All right, here's just a kind of a smattering of news organizations that have been a part of our UNC program. You can see that it's a real cross-section of media companies, a lot of them here in North Carolina, but also across the Southeast. We've got a lot of success stories in this group of people, and people, just news organizations that we're really proud of for, kind of embracing their biggest challenge and trying to solve it. So if you want to move on. All right, I want to talk a little bit about our center. It's got a long mouthful of a name, Center for Innovation and Sustainability in Local Media. We're here at the UNC Hussman School of Journalism and Media. Our center was founded, I think, around 2015 to support, research, education, and outreach in the local media space. That's what our mission is broadly, right? We are here to support local news organizations through our research, education, and outreach. Our vision is to help grow a more equitable and sustainable future for local news, which includes the journalists who are making it and the communities that need it. We really want to take a very kind of holistic approach to what the future of local news it can be. We do all of these things through our research, through education and outreach, and that's a big part of what Table Stakes is, and through working with news organizations who are out there on the ground practicing journalism. And that's a big part of, what are the folks who've gone through our program and are out there, kind of working every day. That's what they're bringing to the table. So that's kind of what we're all about. We're a growing center, and we're really, I think, Table Stakes is a way that we're able to really connect with news organizations in our region and help give them kind of I say sometimes it's a nice steady hand on the back in these really difficult times, and sometimes it's a rocket boost, right? That the coaching, the kind of the best practices in the community is able to offer these news organizations. And it's really amazing to see how a lot of folks can really thrive when they get the attention, the support, and some good ideas that they need. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I would call the power of the program, and I'm going to put on a different hat, which is how I was first kind of introduced to table stakes. I was, until about 4 months ago, the general manager of the Daily Tar Heel, which is the independent student newspaper here on campus. And I became general manager of the Daily Tar Heel in late 2017, when we had been going through a bit of a crisis, about 10 years straight of declining revenue, a lot of kind of hand wringing over the future and what the future could be or should be, but not a lot, and a lot of people who really very deeply cared about this student newspaper, this historic institution, but there wasn't a lot of consensus on how that should be done, right? There are a lot of student newspapers, especially independent ones like the Daily Tar Heel, are very unique places. And so I came into the job, at a time where we were just about out of money. Honestly, we had our savings had gone from about $1 million in revenue, $1 million in the bank, to I think around $50,000 in the bank. And we had, I would say, 3 or 4 really big problems that we were trying to work on. There was the revenue problem, right? Like where was it going to come from? How could we build new lines of revenue in kind of these challenging circumstances? There was kind of the audience readership problem, right? How could we adapt to the massive changes in the way that students in particular get their news? And then there was kind of some organizational problems related to, how best to create an organization, how to deal with some of the constant turnover and, issues related to experience and skill level that you get with a student newspaper. How could we kind of overcome those issues? And then finally, how could we harness the power of all the people who really care about the newspaper and give them something to do to help? And so, kind of those were our big problems as we went into the program. And, it was really just a key time for me as a leader to be able to kind of get that executive coaching, to get the frameworks that Table Stakes offered, a lot of really great tools for setting priorities, for kind of trying to evaluate how all of the millions of ideas that people have for you, which ones of those were going to be good? Which ones of those were going to be worth my time? And that was a big thing that we learned to do in this program. We really learned to set priorities. And I would say another thing that I really learned to do was how to tell our story in a compelling way. One of the key functions of this program is that you have to give updates to the group. Every time we meet, you have to give an update to the group and tell the group what your challenge is, what you're doing to achieve it, and give lots of updates about how it's going, what's still a problem, what's next, how are we going to attack the next 3 months. And I would get so nervous just getting ready to stand up there in front of these 10 teams of news organizations and the coaches. And I would have butterflies in my stomach getting ready to give these presentations. And, but it really taught me how to kind of tell a story, how to be compelling. And you would get done and everyone would cheer for you. And then people would come up afterwards and give, more pointed support. People would push back, right, on things that maybe, where we were being too easy on ourselves or not taking full advantage of what we could do. And so that I have to say that was a huge part of the training for me, was learning how powerful the story was, both my personal story and the story of this newspaper. And I was able to parlay that into a lot of work getting funding from individual donors, from our alumni, grants, that sort of thing, over the 1.5 to 2 years after we left the Table Stakes program. So I would say, and other things we did in that time is we embraced the tool called Design Do, which is about getting things done, and trying stuff, getting kind of a minimum viable product, doing something, getting feedback, and keeping going. We did a lot of stuff with Design Do. We really embraced the table stake around collaboration, and we launched quite, one of our many collaborations, including our biggest one, which was the Rivalry Challenge, a fundraising competition with the Duke Chronicle. Had the fun hook of being both a collaboration and a rivalry at the same time, and which really struck a nerve with folks, and has just become like an annual, very successful fundraising campaign. And I guess we also talk a lot about outcomes in table stakes. And so I would say our big outcomes, we didn't go out of business. That was our North Star, right? We wanted to stay in business. So over that year, we didn't go out of business. And the first year I was in the year that kind of roughly connects to when we were in table stakes, it was the first year in over 10 years that our nonprofit didn't lose money. The second, and then the year after that was the first year in over 10 years that our total revenue increased. And then we did that again. Our total revenue increased again the year after that, even though we were in a pandemic and there was a lot of uncertainty. So I really credit, it was a lot of hard work by a lot of people, but I also really credit the coaching, the frameworks, and just kind of learning in the things that I learned in the Table Stakes program with helping us kind of turn things around at our student newspaper. So that's kind of the story I would tell there. And
great
so
story.
Now, yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. And you, of course, you watched that all happen.
I
as
did.
a coach.
Yeah. Everyone was rooting for you, big time.
That's right. I would say one thing that was unusual about the Daily Tar Heel was that our target audience of alumni were basically in the room. Journalists, people who we were really trying to reach, actually in the room. So now I think we're going to talk a little bit about, what makes a good participant. And I'm going to let Charlie take that on a bit because he's seen a lot of participants across a lot of programs. And I think he's going to really be able to talk to us about that.
Sure. And it was really, I think, pretty helpful to have Zion Williamson in that Duke Carolina game, right? So
right. Exactly. That was the big game.
Anyway, thank you. And that was a great story, Erica. So in terms of what makes a good participant, well, you could see Erica had urgency, right? Mm-hmm. She did not want to go out of business. You can have other kinds of challenges too, but that one was compelling. So she jumped in. Every participating organization, you can dive all the way in, you can kind of walk in gently, but you need to be all in this program and committed. I think an open mind helps, that if you come in and just do what you were going to do the way you've always done it, then you don't really need the program. We're looking for folks with an open mind who have a willingness to experiment and a willingness for transformation, to kind of not be locked in the past, or maybe in what we would call cherished beliefs, but kind of a willingness to transform and a capacity for growth in that way. And then I would say we have a kind of a core practice called Vegas rules, which means what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I'm not a Vegas guy, but that's kind of the idea. We've seen the hundreds of organizations that have participated here. That can't happen unless people respect the kind of privacy of what's being shared and create a safe place for people to share the things that are of most concern. You could hear in Erica's story, she needed to be free to talk about what she was really facing, not to try to sugarcoat it, but to put the reality of what it looked like for her and the organization out there in a way that she could trust other people to step in and respect that and help her. So these are the kinds of things that we look for in groups that join in the program.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about our next steps. So we have applications open right now. We are kind of going through looking for people to reach out to us. We're reaching out to folks. We have the application is available, but we are asking that folks sign up to do an interview with Charlie and myself before submitting the application. And that's just so that we can get y'all can get a good sense, we can get a good sense of whether or not it's going to be a good fit. The application it's not long, but it is, it does take some time. And we are asking you to share some information, and we don't want you to have to do that unless you think it's probably going to be a good use of your time. So we're asking you to sign up for an interview, put in an application, and then we're going to get started in late October, early November. The program is going to be a hybrid of virtual and in-person sessions this year, kind of depending on public health guidance and kind of where we are with our pandemic and travel and all that kind of thing, and how comfortable folks are. We had originally hoped that we would start in person, but I think the plan now is that our first meeting in late October or early November will be a virtual session, just because there's a lot of uncertainty right now and we need to plan. And then we'll plan on having at least 2 in-person sessions over the course of the year, again, depending on what the public health guidance is at the time. But we feel like that'll be a really great mix of convenient, less travel expenses, but also kind of that in-person, that kind of cohort development, relationship development that really happens when we're in a room together. So that's kind of what we're planning for now.
Okay.
All right. So we do have an opportunity to ask questions. I know we don't have a ton of attendees on the call right now. I know I see Sarah is on here right now. If anyone has any questions, we also have some kind of FAQs that we'll go over as well.
So I'm not seeing any questions, so I think we can move on to the FAQs.
All right, excellent. So Charlie and I were talking about this the other day about what are the big questions people ask. And he said, well, there's really only one question. And that question is, how much time is this going to take? And there's really only one answer to that, which is that it takes as much time as you want to put into it, and that it needs to be part of your work, right? This program doesn't really work if it is if it's external to your day-to-day job. How it really works is when it is just integrated into the work that you're doing. And that's when it makes the work you're doing, I wouldn't say easier, but it makes it more strategic. It makes it a better use of your time and that sort of thing. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, may I add to that? So if you just go back to your example, you needed to diversify and increase your sources of revenue.
Right.
You had to do that anyway.
Absolutely.
That was not make work, and these challenges aren't make work. Instead, you use the program to help you do that more, better, and I think the value proposition is increasing the odds of success against that. So I would say it wasn't extra time. It was actually saved you from a lot of spinning, if you will, and kind of gave you, the help and peer support and coaching to be kind of more efficient and effective in realizing that challenge.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Like if my challenge had been something kind of not related to my day-to-day job, then it probably would have failed, right? Like I wouldn't have had the time. Who does have the time? But because it was very much integrated into the work I'd been hired to do, it worked out. And also, it fit really well into kind of my kind of joint role as both someone who was running a business and someone who was educating students, to have that. It really fit in well to both of those roles that I had. And then I think, the next question that we kind of thought of is, what makes an organization an ideal candidate? And that's actually a much harder question to answer, because because we've seen success across organizations. We've seen success across kinds of organizations, sizes of organizations. And I think it kind of goes back to some of what Charlie was talking about earlier. You need to have that ability to kind of be all in. You need to, you need to have an organization that's ready for that kind of coaching, advice. I think, and that's something that you kind of have to think through yourself, right? Is your organization structured, and is it ready to have a program like this? What would you add to that?
Yeah, I would say, yes, you need a challenge that you're really committed to, not a nice to have, but one that you must achieve. As Erica said, you need some readiness within the organization to pursue that. And you yourself have to have the kind of power and ability to have impact on that and the willingness to do so. And regardless of what may come up over the course of the year, or whether it's the pandemic or racial reckoning or corporate restructurings, whatever it might be, this has to be something that you really want to pursue.
Yes, absolutely. All right, the next question is, again, something that's a little hard to answer. How do we measure organizations with capacity for growth? And that's something that is that's actually really, really hard to answer, I would say. But we're definitely looking for, I think the things we were just talking about, right? Like the ability to identify a challenge that can be tackled, that's central to existence. Yeah, I don't know. I
would add, Bibi, that we have a little formula called DVP, which is the probability of change equals the extent of the dissatisfaction times the clarity of the vision times the ease of the process. And we tend to look for organizations that have a fair amount of dissatisfaction with where they are today, some sense of a vision that they would like to go to, and they really want to increase the odds that they're going to get there.
That's right. Yeah, because we can help a lot with process if you have dissatisfaction and you have some vision.
Right.
We can also help you figure out how to create the right kinds of dissatisfaction in your program amongst your staff as well.
Right.
Because I think that's a common issue, right? Like some people in the organization have the dissatisfaction, other people don't. And that's a big part of what we talk about as well. All right, next question. It's just me at my startup. Is that a problem? I would say no, not necessarily. Again, like it is, it's more about capacity, willingness, that sort of thing. I think if you do have a team that is going to take better, that can attend attend the meetings and do a lot of this work, that's for sure better. But we've also had kind of single team, single member startups kind of go through as well. What's your take on that, Charlie?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about Angie Newsom out in Western, North Carolina, who, I think one of the ideas here is that if you're really successful, you may not just be you at your startup.
Yes, that's right.
One of the great things we saw with Angie is over the course of the year, she started bringing more people. And the same thing with the High family, in Whiteville, that you're bringing, they had, a number of people, it wasn't a startup, but you could see new people that were joining them as a result of their success. So the program, we've had a number of startups, in here, and I think the program provides a peer group, it provides a coach, it provides a framework. And one of the great things about the geographic focus is that for startups, it can offer you folks who could potentially use what you're doing.
That's right.
So if you're Angie out there in Western North Carolina, and there are other statewide organizations that are looking to have impact, then the opportunity for collaboration is right there. And a lot of people rooting for you, and a lot of people who may have access to resources that would be a help. So it's not a problem in that sense. And I think it's enriching for everyone, for the legacy organizations in there, Sometimes they wish they could be part of the startup, there's a lot of synergy that gets created. I think it's, again, the geographic notion of this program is very helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say, there were definitely times when I was the only person at the Daily Tar Heel table, especially at the beginning. And I remember at the beginning thinking, oh, look at, I'm so little, look at these other news organizations. They have all these staffers here, and they have all this capacity, and they have all this knowledge that I don't have. But then as the year went along, I realized I have a lot of flexibility. I have a lot of authority. I have a lot of ability to do things today if I decide I want to do them today. A lot less red tape. And so, by the time I ended the program, I felt a lot different about my relative position and what I was able to do, because you get to really see there are. The grass isn't always greener. Everyone's got different challenges, and it can really kind of help you realize the power that your small organization has. And I would definitely agree with the idea that, a lot of our programs have added staff during the year they were in our program, because of the work that because of the coaching, because of the programming, because of the connections that they're making inside the room. All right, next question. Does my affiliation with CISLM end after I graduate table stakes? And the answer to that is no. After the table stakes program ends, the formal year program ends, you become an alum of the wider table stakes world and of our program. We have the wider table stakes world, which is run by the American Press Institute. They do a kind of alumni connector. They provide coaching hours on call occasionally for alums, and they do programming for alumni across all of the table stakes programs. And then here at CISLM, we are embarking on an increased alumni programming for people who have gone through the program. We really are hoping, we've seen so much ecosystem building and relationship network building happening amongst the people who've been in our program. And we want to boost that, make it a community of practice, like a group of news organizations and people who have a shared vocabulary, a shared theory of change in news, and where that work, that on the ground work that folks are doing, can inform the research that we're doing at CISLM, and where that research can then provide solutions to the problems that everyone's facing in their newsrooms and in their communities. So, this really provides a way for us to both give and receive real-time feedback from the people who are on the ground doing this important work in our small communities across the Southeast. Then the next question, what are some other examples of success from alumni? We definitely have some greatest hits. I'll let Charlie talk about what he called, we were in a meeting together, and he said it would be, we're probably one of can't remember the term you used, but the collaboration between Whiteville, Scalawag, and UNC TV that came out of the first cohort of table stakes here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Whiteville newspaper, the News Dispatch, and this was in 2017. It was a traditional legacy small town newspaper who was, wondering if they could make this transformation into the digital arena, and all those qualities of great participants, were embedded there. And as the Whiteville folks established relationships, some of which they already had, but deepened them with folks in the room, the Les High wanted to tell the story of opioid use and problems with that in their county. They could have told that story, but they actually invited a reporter from Scalawag who would have a different orientation to come stay at their house for a week. And the High family introduced them to anybody you would need to know in that county with their local ties. And out of that came a 6-part story that was printed in the Whiteville newspaper. It was also published by Scalawag online. And then there was a community discussion about the story that was aired by UNC TV, who was also in the program at the same time. And apparently an individual from the foundation was seeing this, and that ended up in grant funds for the county regarding the problem. That is a North Carolina story. And yeah, I would say with, because folks don't just come to hear lectures and read books, but because they commit themselves, as Erica did, there is intimacy in this program and investment in each other and a common language that others from other years or from all these other programs that we've mentioned, you speak the same language. We could introduce you to folks who are in the Media Transformation Challenge program at Poynter now, who would speak the same language. We could introduce you to any of those folks in the Major Metro program, same language. And so you become part of that community with the opportunities for success that come through kind of a really rich, committed network of folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to think of a few other really great success stories in our current cohort. We just published on our CISLM website just today, we published an article about HBCU Game Day, which is this a great example of an organization that really kind of got a rocket boost from, they were in a great position, but they'd always kind of, it's a news site that covers HBCU sports. I've been around for several years. Revenue had always kind of been inconsistent, and kind of with the focus and the coaching that the program brought them, they made some really big changes on the advertising side, the audience side, and now they've got regular revenue that they can count on and forecast and use to pay each other salaries. And it's kind of gone from a side hustle to a job, a career for them. And the site itself is just this immersive, fascinating experience and world entree into the HBCU sports culture world. That's a great story, I think, about a group in our current cohort. We also recently published a post about on Latino NC and Southerly magazine's collaborations that they have done to inform communities in North Carolina. And they have even gone to the point where they're applying for grants together and getting grants together. So that's a really great success story as well. There are a lot more like this. There's success stories related to revenue, collaboration, and journalism. And Charlie, you're going to add something.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we just even go back to the Whiteville example, the High family recently sold the newspaper to an employee, Justin Smith, right? And they sold a different enterprise in 2021 than was there in 2017. And the Reporter Dispatch over the 4 years had really changed and evolved, and moved from where they were to, a place where it was in a great condition to be handed over. And, from that now, and Erica, you might be able to chat about this, there was a new collaboration also regional in North Carolina. And would you maybe say a word about that? But that, I think, is also something that happened 3 or 4 years out.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Border Belt Independent is the new independent investigative news nonprofit that covers, I think, a 4-county rural area in southeastern North Carolina. And it provides kind of the investigative reporting muscle to the local legacy news organizations in that area. really unique and exciting approach to covering important stories in rural areas. I think it's going to be something that a lot of us will learn from as the time approach. Yep, and we've got Sarah actually from the our editor from the Border Belt is here. So Sarah, if you'd like to unmute yourself and say hello, we'd love to hear from you. If you can. Sarah Vasella, can you unmute Sarah Nagum?
I believe so.
Okay.
Let's see. There we go. Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
Hello, how are you?
Great. Yeah, so we were just giving an example, talking a little bit about you, but if you want to jump in and just tell us a little bit about what y'all are up to.
No, I've enjoyed all the stories about Les High, and he said he has great things to say about your organization and table stakes, and so he was really excited for me to take part. He is actually reporting a story this afternoon, so he's not on this call, but yeah, we are just so excited about this new project, sort of doing investigative analytical journalism in 4 counties in southeastern North Carolina. So we're hoping to do table stakes and try to grow our audience. You know, I think the challenge for us is we are brand new in a very rural part of the county where there's limited access to internet, kind of a news, not so much a news desert, but not you know, newspapers that have very skeletal staffs at this point. So yeah, we're just we're happy to have this opportunity, and yeah, I'm really excited to learn more about table stakes.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, I think one of the things that we've talked a lot about in the last few weeks here at CISLM is the way that wins and successes keep coming long after you leave the program, and you know, kind of through the connections that can be made and kind of the entree into kind of the world of what's happening in terms of best practices in journalism. And it's exciting to see things happen even several years after they've gone through the program. So those were our questions, and we just wanted that we had kind of come up with, and if anyone has additional questions, feel free to ask. And if not, I guess we can maybe go to the next slide. So CISLM@unc.edu is the email address that you can send questions to. We'll also be sending out the link for booking an interview with Charlie and myself, just to kind of talk a little bit more in depth about your news organization and kind of moving on from there.